We are so excited to welcome our friends from Poesia Samba Soul at the project Favela da Paz in Brazil here to play a little music for us this morning to get us started. Now falo português nada, então I'm going to try my best, but before I pass it over to Claudinho and Alem and the crew, I will just tell you a little bit about them. So I met Claudinho and Alem in outside of Sao Paulo in 2016. And they started this incredible project, Favela da Paz. It's been many years now, and Claudinho in particular just came together with his friends. They live in what was named one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in the world in Sao Paulo, and just started playing music. They started with tin cans because they couldn't get real instruments. And just little by little, they started to develop this band, Poesia Samba Soul. So they run a cultural project which offers hundreds of young people a chance to learn through music and to get to know life beyond the violence of the community. So it's an incredible project, and we're so excited to have them with us today. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to them to just let us move into this last session of the year with a little bit of Brazil. Então, Claudinho, Elem,
Olá.
aqui vamos.
Olá a todos.
Bom dia, obrigada.
Obrigado. Olá, família planetária. Alegria estar com vocês aqui. Vamos se conectar com a água, com a vida. Hey, 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 pelo Rio São Francisco, lá das bandas do Xingó, vou levar minha família, ou quem sabe até vovó. Arrumei as minhas coisas, vou zarpar bem de manhã. Quero ser o timoneiro desse lindo catamarã. Catamarã, catamarã, desce o rio, sobe o rio, desse povo fiquei fã. Catamarã, catamarã, desce o rio, sobe o rio, desse povo fiquei fã. Canta comigo. Hey, 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 vocês em casa. Hey, 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 nas dunas de mangue seco, na Bahia eu pisei, tomei água de coco verde e jamais me esquecerei. No delta de São Francisco eu conheci muitas pessoas, bom demais. Qualquer dia eu volto de novo. Salve o Nordeste do brasileiro, isso sim é que é coisa boa. Catamarã, desce o rio, sobe o rio, desse povo fiquei fã. Catamarã, desce o rio, sobe o rio, desse povo fiquei fã. Vocês em casa. Hey, 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 Wow.
Thank you.
Gratitude.
Thank you, Claudinho.
Thank you.
Thank you. Obrigada.
Mais.
Mais uma. Sim. A gente vai cantar uma música que fala muito para retornar, retornar ao espírito, retornar à essência. E é de uma forma muito fácil de lidar, a forma muito fácil de cantar para a favela, para esse povo maravilhoso da favela, sobre voltar ao espírito, a retornar. A humildade nos leva a ser um vencedor, ser realista sem deixar de ser um sonhador. A persistência mantém presença no lutador idealista com consciência. Perante ao Criador, somos todos iguais, ninguém é menos ou alguém é mais. Abolir as diferenças nos levam à paz, sem dinheiro sujo eu valho muito mais. A humildade nos leva a ser um vencedor, ser realista sem deixar de ser um sonhador. A persistência mantém presença no lutador idealista com consciência. Perante ao Criador, somos todos iguais, ninguém é menos ou alguém é mais. Abolir as diferenças nos levam à paz, sem dinheiro sujo eu valho muito mais. As aparências só iludem, aprisionam os fracos, sem atitude e personalidade a fortaleza assume que o mundo não é tão belo, tem solução mas não é a salvação. Viver da carne e da matéria oprime o espírito na escuridão, não morra na ilusão, um salve, um brinde à libertação. Levante essa ideia, leva essa ideia na mente e no coração. Siga a paz, o elo se refaz, canta é minha missão. Levante essa ideia, leva essa ideia na mente e no coração. Siga a paz, o elo se refaz, canta é minha missão.
Eu canto pra te alertar, rimo pra me saciar. Sempre vou te apresentar um rap classe A. Espalho o hip hop que a vida me apresentou.
Aprimorei meus versos pra chegar aonde estou. Então faça por amor como poucos que eu conheço.
Venda suas ideias mesmo sem elas ter preço. Só queira saúde pra correr atrás do resto.
Falso não ilude quem nasceu pra ser honesto.
E siga na conduta, não queira disputa.
Reza quem tem fé, quem tem coragem luta.
Arte que te contamina de qualquer maneira. Qual é sua cultura?
A nossa é brasileira.
PSS, dança verde, amarela, azul e branco. Preta, mina, mano, sem raça nem credo. Viver de carne, de matéria, oprime na escuridão. Não morra na ilusão, salve a libertação.
Levante essa ideia, leva essa ideia na mente e no coração. E siga a paz, o elo se refaz. Cantar é minha missão. Levante essa ideia, leva essa ideia na mente e no coração. Siga a paz, o elo se refaz. Canta é minha missão. Não morra na ilusão. Escreva cada página do livro da sua vida. Salve a libertação. Retornamos para a nossa essência. Somos a nossa essência. Somos a vida. A humildade nos leva a ser o vencedor. Ser humilde é ser vencedor. Ser humilde é ser vencedor. Amor no coração. Amor no coração. Amor no coração. Amor tá no coração. Gratidão. Gratitude.
Muito obrigada. Let's unmute everybody and just a little applause. Applauso.
Obrigada. To start the day, thank you.
Obrigada.
Thank you.
Obrigado por trazer alegria para a gente.
Wow.
Thank you. Muito obrigada. Muitos mensagens no chat para vocês e agora os faço chegar. So I'm putting the Facebook for Poesia Samba Soul and for Favela de Paz in the chat. And these guys have been doing Facebook Lives like every day. So if you want more of this, you just go to Facebook and check it out. They're always online, always doing live streams, and they're absolutely amazing. Muito obrigada, and I will pass it over to Bayo. Ciao, ciao. Gracias. Obrigada. Thank you.
It's hard to follow that. Thank you so much, Claudinho and friends, for that beautiful opening. And welcome to everyone. Welcome from wherever you are. I'm still in Chennai, and this is the final session for the year. This is a beautiful closing. I'm so glad to have witnessed and sat in the sonorous, beautiful oral streams of Claudinho's music. There's other kinds of music that we'll be playing today and other kinds of stories that we'll be telling. And so I want to welcome you to dig in your feet into the grounds, into the cracks, into the ancestral landscapes, as we open up this space for the last time before we hibernate together. I want to start with a short story to get things along. A story of how I lost my faith. And let me begin by repeating the words that I know so well, words that have been burned into my bones, burned into my skull. See if I can remember them. I believe in the Father, I believe in the Son, and I believe in the Holy Spirit. I believe that the Father sent his Son to die for my sins, and that on the third day he rose again, that I might be justified and that I might be saved. I believe this. I am born again to live for his glory. Amen. That's about it. I said these words for many years in my teenage years, every Sunday and every Thursday. After church, during midweek services, repeating those words every time. Even when I wasn't the subject of an altar call, I would mutter it to myself, you see, just to be sure that I was on the right side of things, just to be sure that I was believing right. I would say to myself, especially when the pastor saw me met too many times taking the altar call, they would send me back. Like, you were born again last week. You don't need to be born again this week again. But I kept on saying it to myself because I wanted to be true. My father had just passed away, and my entire cosmology was dependent upon this Christocentric framework. The only way I could get to see him again was if I were true, if I made it to heaven. So I said the words, and I said it every time. I said it through university, through my undergrad years, graduating from university, becoming an academic. But you get to a time when you say something long enough that it starts to lose its meaning. And one day I noticed that it wasn't as powerful or as intense as it used to be. It wasn't as urgent. Like, saying it didn't feel like it came from my lips. Like, I only said it out of a sense of desperation so that I wouldn't lose that idea. I wouldn't lose this cherished tradition. But the more I said it, the more I professed my faith, the more it seemed to slip away from me. Like it wasn't mine anymore, or like we're experiencing some kind of ontological breakup. And I wasn't in on it, not fully in on it. One day, as I've said and as I've written many times over, my footprints to the church just dried away, faded away. I remember my mom calling me one Sunday morning. I was a graduate assistant on the quest for my master's and PhD in the university where I graduated from. And she called me, "Bayo, did you go to church this morning?" And from my bed, I went to church. I went to church. My Sundays were about giving excuses to my mom about why I didn't go to church or why I had just come back from church. What did they say in the church today? Yeah, he said, be holy, good things. Yeah, good things like trust Jesus and stuff like that. But I'd lost my faith. And I wasn't sure what to believe in. Of course, beyond the struggles of a teenager or a young man, belief is such a core concept today. It's a very, very central concept today. It's tied into the concepts of what's real, what's true, who do we trust, especially in these politically charged times. We're asking questions like, do we take the vaccine or no? Who do we put our trust in when the nation state seems to be failing us? What does home look like? Who do we trust? And of course, in this course, this is not a uniform place where everyone believes the same thing. I'm sure in your kinship group, you've encountered persons who speak differently, who do not speak in the ways that you do, who use words, in ways that you might not use them. How might we reconcile the fact that we come from multi-cosmological backgrounds and we speak differently? What do we do with that when we have different beliefs? Well, very briefly, before I introduce my dear, dear, dear sister, Pat McCabe, Woman Stands Shining, I want to say a few things about belief. Of course, there are some theories. It's been my way to understand and navigate this notion of belief, to kind of put my finger on the ways people have talked about it. There's one theory called the correspondence theory, not of belief, but of truth, which is sympathetic to our conversations about belief. The correspondence theory basically says that there are valid ways of reasoning, okay? There are valid ways to think about the world, and that there is an objective world that is outside of our subjective experience of it. When our subjective experience of the world corresponds with a world that is outside, objectively true, regardless of who is viewing it or observing it, when there's correspondence within these realms, then we have right belief. Then we're true. Of course, there's a problem with thinking this way. It's not that we should dismiss that. It's just that it tends to fall too blindly to cultural bias, to particular specific context-based ways of seeing the world that are lost because we believe that there is a universal way to see it. And if you're not seeing it the way I'm seeing it, then there's something wrong with you. If you're listening carefully, you might have already noticed that this is the heart of colonization. It's this idea that if you're not seeing the way I'm seeing, then there's something wrong with your culture, there's something wrong with your way of seeing, or you're not yet brought up to speed, you're inadequate in some sense. Well, rejecting this notion of the correspondence theory, where people who gave themselves the name postmodernists, a ragtag group of unruly bunch of people and ideologies that decided, we're going to reject every notion of truth. We reject every authority. There's no establishment. There's only the way we speak about truth. I can believe anything I want to believe. You can believe anything you want to believe. I have my truth. You have your own truth. Whatever we believe is true. And so, feminists attached themselves to this movement. There was a mass retreat into language and discourse and analysis. The stress was on diversity and multiplicity. But you see, even with this, as beautiful as it is, there's often a soft longing that someday we would be reconciled into a coherent truth, and that there isn't an objective account to hold us all. There's nothing to hold us. There's nothing to be accountable to. It's the regime of anything goes. Hence, we live in a postmodern, modern time of fake news and all these cross currents streaming into each other. And the question still remains, how do we process belief? What do we do with this multiplicity? There is a sense, however, this is the third sense, the fugitive sense that I want to speak about, which is not dismissive of everything I've just spoken about, correspondence, postmodernism. There is a third sense in which belief is not ours to wield. And I don't know if you noticed that. That even, maybe I should put it this way, that we're not in charge of what we believe. It's not entirely in our control. And I just shared a story, my own story of how The thing that I'd held dear was slipping away. It was no longer mine to wield. There is a sense in which we're enraptured, you see, in particular ways of believing. It's almost as if believing spills beyond me. It's almost as if lands believe as well. It's almost as if belief is an ecology, a terrain, a biosphere, a spiritual sphere, a common ground um, of acting in the world. Let me see if I could bring that down briefly. I was reading an article some time ago about how cooking helped us reach some evolutionary step. The very act of cooking our food was an evolutionary leap that helped us grow brains, larger brains, than the previous species, the previous hominid species might have had. And this idea that food is connected to thought, that food is connected to moods, might be scandalous to some, but it's food for thought, isn't it? That the way we approach the world, the way we believe in the world, is tethered, is anchored in part to the kinds of food we eat. Isn't that preposterous? That there are microbial gastrointestinal activisms in my gut right now, and they're processing food, they're processing desires and yearnings. And these desires and yearnings are attached to neurotransmitters, serotonin, that might influence the way that I believe, or I choose to believe, or I move in the world, and the ways that I feel. And that these microbial activisms are in turn attached to agricultural practices. And those agricultural practices are in turn attached to nation-state legislations. And those nation-state legislations are attached to ecological and topographical shifts. So that if I were to account for the ways that I believe, or the things that I believe, I cannot reduce it to a cognitive intellectual event. It is ecological. It is more than human. It is a landscape. It is a zoosphere. So I think we do ourselves in when we attach belief too strictly to veracity. I don't think belief terminates at veracity in the empirical sense, at least in one empirical sense. I don't think belief is tethered to a prefabricated reality. I think belief are the tendrils, the tentacular realities of multi-species engagement, singing as beautifully as Claudinho, yearning and making reality in their experimentation. So who do we believe, or who do we trust? Well, if you've been listening closely, I think the question has been queered. Who is we? What is we? Who do we refer to? And doesn't it now sound like an animal question? Like something beyond just where do we tick the box? It sounds like an open-ended invitation to roam, to be met. Maybe the next morsel of eba or bread or porridge that I put in my mouth is a religion. Maybe the ways that you believe and the things that I profess and the things that you profess and the things that I say, maybe, just maybe, are much closer than we think. Maybe the dualisms that we get stuck upon, whether a thing is true or not true, whether I speak in a particular way or I don't, maybe they're all ecological practices. Maybe there are ways of yearning and framing and singing the world into being and becoming. And maybe even the things that we claim to believe are so promiscuous, so beyond our claims to ownership, that they do other things that we don't expect them to. So let me end with that. This particular part. My fondest memories of Pat, are, Pat, remember when we were in Sao Paulo, when we went to eat together? You can unmute yourself. Do you remember that day we were?
How can I forget that?
Awesome. That's actually my fondest memory. Just sharing a meal, eating we were really hungry, and we just had a beautiful meal together, and that speaks to me more than anything that we've done ever since. Even though we've shared many moments this year together, speaking, and there's many more to come, I see. Pat McCabe is my big sister, like my mother and my dear friend. What's surprising is that we don't always agree. We don't, use the same language. In a conversation we had recently, she was just saying, noticing how I'm huge on disorder and tricksters and fault lines and fissures and breakings away. And Pat is very grounded in matters of order and the land and ancestors. Now you might say, how shall the twain meet? The reason I keep on inviting Pat beyond the meat that we shared with each other is the productive generative tensions, that emerge from our conversations, not to be subsumed into some universal theory, not to be collapsed into the one, but in some sense, I'm going to use that word that Catherine Keller uses in her work, the apophatic, that there's a place where we notice our failures to reduce everything, to erase particularities, and to come with one story for everything. Just dwelling and fellowshipping and communing with Pat reminds me that the world spills beyond my theories, and that the world is more than any one ideology. So we can think in two registers. We can think in terms of order and disorder, and I think they need each other. We can think in terms of completion and open-ended emergence. In fact, the way I will put that is we need to pray to the ancestors as much as we need to pray to the spirit of the fault lines. It's only in communion, in their fellowshipping, that things emerge. So without further ado, I want to invite my mother, sister, friend, meat-eating partner, Pat McCabe, Women Stand Shining. Sister.
Thank you, Bio. Thank you for what a fabulous morning for me. So say Yat B'nai, greetings to each one. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, I guess good middle of the night. Part of the joy of being here this morning is Bio asked me some time ago if I would be willing to come and participate here. And then he says, and I'll let you know when. And so like 6 or 7 days ago, he's like, okay, now you. And so I just really appreciate that spirit of spontaneity and timing and such, so I feel really happy to be here in that way today. I'm going to greet you in our traditional way as well and say, She'e'iya tachi nishni aro ashi bashishi. Madishgejne dashanale. Klauschi daushache kwatautani nishli. Telling you about my clans. We get our clans from our mothers. And also I was adopted into the Lakota spiritual way of life, and I was given the name Wiyakpa Najinwi. And I've been translating that more recently to womaning, standing, shining. It's an energetic, maybe, to be walking around here as the female of our kind. And it's a catalyst to be that as well. So I'm just sort of acknowledging that with this motion. You know, our languages are almost all verbs. So to me, that's acknowledging a truth about the nature of our reality here, which is that everything is in motion. And everything, you know, there's really nothing solid. It's just very slow molecules. And so we have this concept in Lakota called taku wakan shkan shkan. And you can hear that shkan shkan part at the end. I always feel like it's the alliteration of the movement and the motion of everything. So it's talking about the sacred movement and the sacred motion. And so many times when I hear elders praying, they'll be addressing that. Sometimes they will address great mystery, great spirit. Sometimes address grandfather, grandmother, but many times they'll be addressing taku wakan shkan shkan. So it's a reaching out for that motion, and even in that motion, I'm going to say there is a kind of order, but it's not the order that we know how to put together. It's an order that is ever changing, ever evolving. So maybe one way to look at it is in that spiral way. So we're passing around similar places. We're moving in a similar motion, maybe even, but it's always heading someplace new, and it's always renewed over and over again. I've been thinking a lot about the order of the ocean. The rhythm of the waves. There's an order there. And yet it's completely unpredictable how those waves are going to fall. And that's why they can always sneak up on you when you turn your back. So I'm very conscious of order because of how we were talking about coming into this conversation. And I will say that the energy here and the way listening to bio, it's a little disorienting walking in here, friends. What you have created here. So good work, I guess I'll say. Good job. So I wanted to, I woke up and I was thinking some things were going through my mind about what on earth to say in this space. I guess I want to say a little bit about how I'm moving through this time of disorder, this disorder that's arriving at a precise, exact right moment. So I wanted to start by talking about a little bit about David Bohm, talking about the implicate order. And I was a part of a dialogue that was looking to be a Bohmian dialogue. And so Bohm was I guess, I wonder what he would have called himself, but we tend to call him a quantum physicist. I mean, if you're a quantum physicist, how could you even have that name, right? But he was a quantum physicist. And so he, I won't go into too much about everything that he did and said, but the thing I really wanted to bring up is this idea that really there is so much motion going on all around us as these languages, like I say, these ancient languages refer to. And also there are so many variables of encounters, possibilities for encounter, that it actually would be completely overwhelming to us to really take in how much motion and how many new things are being created every moment. And for me, this is the symbol of the equilateral cross, the sacredness of it. It's these encounters. It's these encounters. So when these two things meet, two variables, two life forms, two ideas, two sexes, then something happens and something new is created. And so there was a time when I was really thinking about the sun, the sunlight, and this interaction between our holy star, this sun, and this Mother Earth, and this conversation that's been going on between them for, I don't know what our scientists likes to say, billions of years, a long time. And in this conversation of light, of air, of earth, of water, all these life forms arrive. In response. It's really stunning. And it's an endless creativity in this conversation. And there is sort of a predictability about it. I mean, there has been for some billions of years. And yet, it's always unfolding and evolving. So right now, I'm in my mother's house in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and she's going to turn 97 next month. And so this is a super precious time right now for me, a very, very deep time, and also a very joyful time. She's got an amazing sense of humor. We're always laughing. And so I'm really enjoying that. But it's also hard for me to be here. It's a little urban for me. I'm from the north, and it's much more rural. And so I've been trying to adapt here. So I've been walking around this suburban neighborhood for exercise sometimes. And what I'm noticing is there's these cracks in the pavement. And now I found 3 of them. But in the cracks of the pavement, there is this plant coming up, mullein. Maybe some of you know mullein, really fuzzy leaf, huh? And it's a primary medicine to treat lung issues, right? And I just can't help but marvel at this, because as I look everywhere else in the neighborhood, I don't see any of these plants anywhere. I don't see where a seed could have come from. But here come these little baby mulleins up from the cracks in the sidewalk and on the pavement. And so as I keep thinking about this conversation going on between this holy star and this Mother Earth, they're talking us over. And they're saying, it's in the lungs, it's in the lungs, you know? And so here comes this being, this baby, this child, this impulse to meet us. I mean, I was like down on my knees in the middle of the road yesterday, talking to this little mullein plant coming up, and these kids went skateboarding by, I'm sure, and they thought I was pretty nuts, but it was just so amazing to me to see that. And so there's this order there. There's an order in relationship and in response to us. And I've been thinking a lot about being this child. So in our language, Dene Bezad, I don't know if I said that I come from Dene Nation. So in our language, we call ourselves holy earth surface walkers. Holy earth surface walkers. And so that implies many things, but one of the things it implies is so our domain, so to speak, is to be on the surface of the earth. There are other domains. So maybe your domain is to be within the earth, and maybe another domain is to be above the earth. But ours is holy earth surface walker. And so when I go out to make my offerings in the morning, and I'm standing between that holy star and this Mother Earth and this long conversation, it's really powerful. It's powerful to be in the middle of that encounter. So this holy star is taking in information from throughout the cosmos, and as our galaxy is on this ride also throughout cosmos, right? So there's an order in that motion, and yet it's constantly moving in uncharted territory, and moving through different, who knows, energetics, densities, light. But that news of the cosmos is being given to our holy star. And then that holy star shines it down onto this Mother Earth. So she's getting news of the cosmos. And then meanwhile, she has her heart, her center. One of the elders said she has a heartbeat every 10,000 years. So there's that boom and that reverberation coming out. So we're living in that vibration coming up through her and out of her. Maybe. And that's part of this conversation. There's a sound. And I and you, wherever you are, we get to be taking every step in the middle of that conversation. I say we have these passionate parents. They are wildly passionate. This holy star and this Mother Earth. And in that passion, they're constantly creating life, more life, more life, more life. And not just more life, but I call it a symphony of life. A symphony of life. The most complex symphony of all these beings interacting. Not just interacting though, we're an interbeing. I love Thich Nhat Hanh's turning English into indigenous concept. He really did it with that word. Interbeing. We are an interbeing. The well-being of one is completely dependent on the well-being of another. And so there again, there's an order. And to go back to David Bohm's work, when he was talking about, as he began to like try to look through this idea that we can know and pull back the curtains and have a look into the mystery a little bit, what I received from the little bit that I read there was, it's way more than we can deal with in our own biology, in our own finiteness, in our own singularity of our species and perception, and in our intellect. And so he was saying, you know, we would like explode basically if we could really take in everything that's going on there. And so we have mechanisms within ourselves to make it manageable, to make being a part of this creation manageable, so that we can operate in time and space, and so that we can interact with the physical world. And so our mind arranges things into bite-sized pieces, into an order that will keep us intact. And so I have to think that there is sort of an infinite number of ways to order this cacophony of harmonious chaos. So here we have a place of choosing. How are we going to order it? I could have a grid of equal squares to order it. I could have stripes. I could have, you know, so here's where our beliefs are trying to make this creation doable, manageable. And I'm gonna try to come in for a landing here. So in Lakota culture, we have a concept of the great mystery. I think we should really be wary of cultures that don't have a concept of not knowing. That don't allow for that possibility. For me, that's highly suspect. So we have this concept of the great mystery, and really the best way that we can describe it is to call it takuwa kanshkan, the sacred motion. And so we have over time developed ways of approaching that mystery. And there are some things that we can know about it. One is we do it in community. That makes me want to cry right now. Because that's a luxury that we took for granted, and now it's being withheld from us for a bit. So we get to really feel the preciousness of it. You know, in many of our ceremonies, we forgo food and water for several days, and you come to the place where you can smell water like a horse can smell water. You get so attuned and so alert to its presence. And so that's how I feel about community right now. It's being withheld, and so it's being accentuated. But we approach this, when we go to approach the great mystery, we do it in community. We also purify ourselves first. We go into the inipi, into the purification sweat lodge. And so I'm speaking of a particular practice of a vision quest, of crying for a vision, we call it humbletia, crying for a vision. And we literally, especially for the 4 days of no food and no water, your tears can come pretty easy. And you stay in a very confined place, and we say, no matter what comes, we will stay there. So it's a really deep surrendering offering to the mystery, to say, I offer myself up to you, and whatever you have for me, I place myself before it. I receive it. So we say, you know, you shouldn't go out and do that unless you intend to really receive what comes. So if you receive a vision, so here we are crying for a vision, and if you receive that vision, it's not something to ignore. You can't say, I wasn't expecting that one. I think not. You know, it's a commitment. And the first time I went out, there was drought, and so the animals were coming down out of the mountains, and so there were like mountain lion tracks and bear tracks and stuff around, and I thought, well, I'm just gonna sit there, and if they come, they come, and I don't know what's gonna happen, you know. And as it turns out, that was like the least of my worries. Absolutely, the least of my worries was to be worrying about bears and lions, because I was going to meet the great mystery, some face of the great mystery. And what the great mystery chose to show me while I was out there was a life, a human life, so beautiful, so beautiful, so full of just even the ways of being able to perceive were so deep and expansive, intuitive, telepathic with buffalo and horses and people far away and trees and water, to really feel for that moment, that expanded human being that is the animal human being here on this Mother Earth, to feel the hearts and intentions of the buffalo, to feel the hearts and intentions of the people tending to our daily life as we were out on a hunt. And it was so beautiful. And it was devastating when it was time to come back to this world. Devastating. I really felt like I didn't know if I was going to survive it. You know, all these people were there when I came back to celebrate my return and to give me some gifts for future ceremony. And I was trying to be a good guest, I guess. But I was devastated. I was so devastated. And that went on, that devastation went on for a few months. Well, it went on for years, but the acuteness of it went on for a few months. And Spirit told me, well, that's going to be your life, daughter. You're going to travel back and forth between these worlds. That's going to be your life. So buck up. And that has been my life. I did receive that. And I did accept it. And everywhere that it has led. And so since then, I've been continuing to approach that mystery in a pretty open-ended way. So I did that formal ceremony for, I don't know, 25 years. And now it's become a way of being and a way of life to to keep offering myself up to this great mystery. And where it leads me is so extraordinary. It leads me to me, to the true nature of me, ever evolving. And right now I am having the time of my life. It's so good. It's so good. To follow where this between me and great mystery intersect over and over. Now how about this? Now how about this? It's always a proposal. It's never a you must. It's never a thou shalt. But Spirit knows how to get me going. Spirit says, you know, Pat, there is a huge possibility for healing if such and such were to happen. And then Spirit knows that what I'm going to do about a proposition like that. I'm going to say, really? What do we do? What do we do? How can I play? How can I participate? What can I do? And then Spirit, bit by bit, reveals some outrageous, audacious plan. That I have to grow into. That I have to grow into over and over. And that's exciting to me, to grow in that way. I'm not having unsustainable growth. I'm not having growth that destroys everything around me. And so in that sense, there is an order and a truth. You know, for me, I say truth. I'm going to say we don't get to all have our own truth and still have life on this planet. And this is a big part of our dilemma right now. There is a truth that corresponds to thriving life here. And we have that coupled with free will. We can choose anything we want. I mean, look around. People are choosing to do anything they could think up. But we're bumping into this natural boundary of sorts, which is we're getting ready to undo what can give us life here. And the other part of this amazing setup that we're in is we're an interbeing. So we have what causes life to thrive. We have our free will as the individual moving parts of being a single organism. What a setup, huh? What a setup. Now, if that isn't a spiritual pressure cooker, I don't know what is. So for me, I look to ancient cultures because they have been navigating, they have been aware of the setup over a long period of time. And they have been working on their methodologies for being a presence here that can be in harmony with this setup. And so I'm watching them. I by blood, I come from one. I was adopted into another one. But they're all over the place, you know? And so I'm watching. Like they're all over the earth, right? And so I'm watching what kinds of activities did they engage in to remain in harmony with this construct? And it's really it's one of those beautiful tensions that restriction can bring. In this modern world, we think we hate the word restriction. And we hate the word rules, and we hate the word laws. Because we've been abused by them. But for me, there can be the laws of life. And there is a way for us human beings, the five-fingered ones, to be a being here that causes all life to thrive. Let's just take that in for a second. There is a way for us as human beings to be a being that causes all the rest of the life to thrive. Do we know what that is anymore? I'm gathering clues from what humans that have gone before me know. But the biggest clues come from this submission and presenting myself to the mystery. Then I'm offering myself up to the current itself. And where it takes me is so surprising And over, I am all of my skill set, all of my natural inclinations are brought to bear over and over again. And I feel the harmony of where I'm led. And so I'm not in a big dilemma right now on about this time in that sense, because I've been going out and making my offerings and presenting myself to this mystery, this order that is moving beyond me, this symphony, and also the possibilities of what might be. And I've been offering myself up to that many days in a row for some time. And my prayer is, show me how to participate fully in the very highest possibility for life, light, and love. Show me how to participate fully in the very highest possibility for life, light, and love. And I have to believe that that's exactly what my life is. I am participating in that possibility. And it's not a known. I don't think anybody knows. I don't think the earth has seen it yet. So I guess I'll stop there in saying that the great philosophers, my grandmothers, propose that we come from original beauty. Other grandmothers propose we come from original sin. But my grandmothers propose that we come from original beauty. So that's the grid that they're going to allow to order this this place. So I say, you know what they said to me: you were born into beauty, as beauty, for joyful life. That's the truth. You were born into beauty, as beauty, for joyful life. That's the truth. And so I find, why not assume that orientation? So I try on beliefs and I see how they line up with life, with good feeling, whether they bring right mind, right heart, right body, right spirit, and allow me to be a human being that participates in causing all life to thrive. I'll stop there.
Pat, I'm not going to offer words except to say it happened exactly the way that the universe intended for it to. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Welcome back, people. Let me start with this. A song for y'all. Iṣẹ́ Olúwa kò lè bàjẹ́ o. Iṣẹ́ Olúwa kò lè bàjẹ́ o. 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 Iṣẹ́ Olúwa kò lè bàjẹ́ o. Iṣẹ́ Olúwa kò lè bàjẹ́ o. Composed music there. To attend to the words and to the worms and to the smoke and to the flames. Thank you, my dear sister Pat, for this space, for your teaching. And thank you all for threading this ground with the mystery, with your feet, with your breath, with your wisdoms, with your aha, you know. Now, this is the part where I would like us to do something together. But of course, I would like to offer a libation of words before we get in there. Picture a scene. It's ancient. It's an ancient kingdom, and in a beautiful palace somewhere in the land of Israel, a king steps into his court. And the musicians, their chests are swelling with pride. Because you see, this king is no mere king. He's one of them. I'm sure those musicians would have nudged each other and said, he's one of us. They were speaking about King David. And David is this handsome king, garlanded with the legend of his achievements. He's the one that brought down Goliath, throwing that smooth pebble that was attended to by the force of a spirit, who was the one that took over from Saul and united the tribes of Judah and Israel. He's no mere king. He's a musician, he's a farmer, he's a shepherd. And with all of this, the musicians start to play. They start to play. They play their harps. They blow the shofar. They sing. And then somewhere in the singing of the psalms, the conductor of the music utters a word that is a strange word that has confused many people who have looked into the texts. The word is Selah, Selah, and it appears, I think, 71 times in the book of Psalms and 3 times in the book of Habakkuk. No one exactly knows what it means. It's a fugitive word. It's a mysterious word. Not just mysterious because those of us reading it in this modern times have lost a sense of it. It seems that the word had always been mysterious, even in previous iterations of Judaism and those holy scriptures. Or some say that the Selah means a pause. Like the conductor was saying, this is the place where you slow down. This is the place where you stop playing. This is the place where you riff. I've heard some people say that their rabbis insist that Selah means do a riff, do a jazzy bit for us, go off script. And then some say that it's amen and amen, but in a deeper sense than just saying amen, maybe closer to the word ashe from the Yoruba people. And then some say Selah means sing louder, It's just a rather inconvenient word. I think of Selah, and that's Selah, as a break, as the discontinuity that prophesies prophesizes strange kinds of continuity. It's more than just a pause, it's not the pause in the sense of the videotape that freezes the tape and then resumes. The word resume comes from, etymologically means to take back, to be taken back. I don't think there's a taken back here. There's something deeper happening here. It's like a crease, a kairotic moment, a moment of ecstasy, this Selah, a glitch, an embarrassing moment. Speaking of embarrassing moments, I'd always experienced selahs, but I didn't know it by that name. When we were little, my sisters, I had only sisters, my sisters and I would be in rich conversation, be talking about everything with our cousins nearby and our friends. And then in the middle of our conversation, some preternatural silence would descend. And then we would say, after a moment of that silence, not knowing what to do with it, we would say, an angel has passed. I don't know if you guys have that saying as well, that an angel has just passed. An angel has just walked through the room. There's a boring word for that phenomenon. They call it a Harvard pause. I don't know why they would name that mysterious moment after Harvard University, but it's called a Harvard pause. And they've studied this phenomenon that in rich conversation in society, in social gatherings, there comes a moment when sometimes a silence would drown out everything that can be said and would hold it in its grip. Just something mysterious. And we would notice each other as if for the first time. It's so mysterious that if anyone were to suggest a word in that moment, it would land awkwardly. It's as if it resists words in that moment of coming through. An angel has passed, they would say. An angel is traveling, a jinn is traveling. This is the expanded notion of rest that beckons on us today as we prepare to take a break from this course, as we prepare to take a break from this year. This is the notion of rest, this selah, this deeper than a pause moment, this moment when words will not do, because selah is a moment of creation. Pat spoke about the ongoingness of creation. Like selah is this fingerprint of the divine that says the world is still being created. And this is the moment where you hush. This is the moment of visitation. This is the moment of an advent. I was thinking about hibernations when I was preparing for this session. I know next to nothing about hibernations. We don't live in a land, I never grew up in a land where bears hibernate. But I guess you guys don't even know that much as well, because hibernation is a mystery. It's not that we figure that out. It's that bears go into sleep, but how they're able to survive for 5 months without water and food, and how their muscles don't atrophy, how their bones still maintain some kind of ecological vitality. Is a mystery. How they're able to convert urine into muscle and fat into strength is a mystery. And this seems like a beautiful animal figure for the kinds of rests that we're being invited into. Not just taking a break, we're not just going on a holiday. We're being invited into an expanded, stranger ecological imperative. Rest is when something crawls in and sneaks in, a visitation, an advent. Rest is how bodies get stranger, touching each other. Rest is the compost heap of Aaron's beautiful expertise. There's a lot we've said and done for 6 sessions since we began in October 18. But this is probably the moment when silence falls. We're not just taking an intermission. I feel with Pat's invitation, with the threaded through invitations of teachers that have come through this course, David, Pat, you all and your wisdoms. That we're being invited to transmute energies, to learn how to die well, to learn how to give and to surrender to things that exceed us. So Selah is where the world is made again and again, where we're being invited to sniff out an animal place, to curl up, find a warm zone, and surrender ourselves to the genius of worms and warmth and elders and ancestors. To practice demise as magic, to practice listening and making sanctuary as a deeper form of rest that escapes modern citizenry.